Hey, this is Dr. Barry. Do you have questions about nuts? Which nuts are good for a weight loss diet, for a low carb, high healthy fat diet, or a ketogenic way of eating? That's what we're going to be talking about in this video is which nuts you can eat and which ones you should probably avoid. So if this sounds like a good subject that you'd like to learn more about, watch this video and then also consider please clicking the subscribe button right down below and the little bell right beside it. That way, every time I get a bright idea, you'll be one of the very first people to know. So click that subscribe button. All right, let's talk about nuts. Now, nuts are a bit of a controversy in the low carb, high healthy fat ketogenic community because what we're trying to do in this diet is to kind of replicate how our ancestors ate in the past. And to the best of our knowledge, they ate kind of discrete meals. When they were hungry, they would eat. And when they got full, they would stop eating. And then they wouldn't eat again until they were hungry. And that would be several hours later. The entire point of the ketogenic way of eating is to try to keep your insulin level as low normal as possible for as many hours a day as possible. And you do that by not eating. And so, if you eat, whether you eat one meal a day, two meals a day, or three meals a day, try to do that in a time restricted window of 6 or 8 hours a day so that you're fasting for 16 or 18 hours each day. And that's going to help tremendously with your weight loss. And then when you do eat, make sure and eat plenty of fat, good healthy fats, so that you're not hungry in between meals and then you're not hungry during your 16 or 18-hour fast. Now, nuts can definitely be a part of a ketogenic diet, a low carb, high healthy fat diet, but you got to watch out for the nuts. And there's several reasons that people have problems with them. And you have to come to know yourself and who you are and how you react to things because nuts are very easy. It's very easy to just grab a handful of nuts and eat them, and then grab another handful of nuts and eat them, and then grab another handful of nuts and eat them. And if you do that, during a snack in between your meals, then even though there's not many carbs in there, there are carbohydrates and there is protein, and those are going to bump your insulin level up, and that can effectively turn off any fat burning that you would have been doing otherwise. And so for some people, they're just too easy to reach and get. Okay. And so some people need to leave them alone. You have to know if you're that person or not. For some people, nuts can be, they're kind of snacky, right? They're like a snack food. And so they can be almost a trigger food and kind of bring back the old days when you snacked constantly all day long. And so if nuts are a trigger food for you, then it may be best to avoid them. If you have trouble with phytic acid or with lectins, and if you don't know what that means, then you probably don't know you have problems with it, or you haven't found that out yet. And so that's something you can read about and then try to discover through experimentation, adding nuts, subtracting nuts to see if you have a problem with phytic acid or lectins. Some nuts contain phytic acid and some can mimic lectin and the problems that that can cause some people. And so if you don't have any problems with that and you've got room in your diet within your feeding window to add some nuts, then here's the list of nuts that aren't going to really give you too many carbohydrates at all. They've got lots of good healthy fats, they have lots of protein, and they have a little bit of carbohydrate, but not too much. The best of all, the lowest carb nut that I've ever found is a pili nut, Pili. They're delicious. They're like a buttered almond. They taste wonderful, and they're super low in carbohydrates. And so, if you want to have a handful of those during a meal, that's perfect. That's totally fine if you can tolerate nuts. Now, the only drawback with pili nuts is that they're quite expensive. I'm going to post a link down below to pili nuts and several other nuts that I enjoy when I do eat nuts, which is now not often on my keto journey, but I used to eat a lot of nuts. And so pili nuts are the lowest carb by far and away, but they're quite expensive. Number two on the list is pecans. You may call them pecans, and I won't hold that against you if you do, but pecans are very low carb, about 3 grams per ounce, and pili nuts are about 1.1 grams of carbohydrates per ounce of nuts. Those are great numbers, right? So you could have a big handful of either one and not even come close to your carbohydrate limit for the day. The next is walnuts, and I think everybody pronounces those walnuts, right? They're about 3 grams per ounce of nuts, and so again, a great low carbohydrate nut snack or a nut to add in with your meals if you'd like to do that. The next is macadamia nuts. Again, they're a little pricey. They only have about 4 grams of carbs per ounce, and so that's pretty darn good. Next on the good list, the nice list, is Brazil nuts. They're about 4 grams of carbohydrates per ounce as well. Pine nuts. Now, I love pine nuts, but I have to really limit those because I'll eat the entire package. I love those things, but they're about 4 grams of carbohydrates per ounce, and that's not bad at all. And then finally on this list is not a nut, but actually a seed. It's my favorite seed of all. It's pumpkin seeds, either with or without the shell. Actually, it's more ancestrally appropriate to eat them with the shell on. So you have to crack that shell and take the kernel out, or you can eat them like Nisha does and just crunch it all up and eat shell and all. Seriously, she does that. And I think that's probably fine, but I don't know. It freaks me out a little bit. But those are the list of nuts and then the one seed that are pretty darn low carbohydrate and fit in great with a low carb, high healthy fat or a ketogenic way of eating. Now that's the nice list. Let's talk about the naughty list. And these are nuts, every one of which I love, but I can't eat them because they're too high in their carbohydrate count. The worst nut on the planet, carbohydrate count wise, is a chestnut. Has about 15 grams of carbs per ounce of chestnuts. And they're delicious. They're divine. But yeah, no, I can't. And if you're trying to limit your carbohydrates, you probably need to leave the chestnuts alone because they're so tasty. You're probably going to eat more than an ounce. Next is cashews. They have 9 grams of carbohydrates per ounce, give or take. Delicious. I love them, but I can't eat them. Too many carbohydrates for me. They'll stall my weight loss, and for me, they actually cause a little inflammation. Next is pistachios, another nut that I love. Nisha loves these as well, but they have 8 grams of carbs per ounce of nuts, and that's shelled nuts, and that's just too carby for me. Next is not really a nut, it's a peanut, okay? And you may or may not know this, but peanuts are not nuts. They are legumes. They grow under the ground. Unless you're a southern boy like me, you may not know that. You may think peanuts grow on peanut trees, but they do not. They grow under the ground just like a potato. And little known fact, back in the 1920s, they were called goober peas, and nobody ate them except for the poorest of the poor. Nobody else would eat them because they were called a goober pea. And then in the 1920s, I think a company changed the name to the peanut, and all of a sudden they were now a nut. Good for you, healthy, and then everybody started eating peanuts. Great marketing ploy, but not accurate. They have 6 grams of carbs per ounce, too carby for me and probably for you as well. And then finally, almonds, another one of my favorites that I used to eat a lot of on my keto journey, but now that I've gotten to a very, very low carbohydrate ketogenic way of eating, I almost never touch almonds anymore because they have 6 grams of carbohydrates per ounce. Now, I'm not saying that any of these nuts are bad and you should not eat them. That's not the takeaway message. The message is that I want you to know the carbohydrate content. And then if you want to add some of these nuts in with your diet, even chestnuts, you can add a few with a meal and a recipe. I think it's fine, but you got to be aware how high they are in their carbohydrate count. So some people can use nuts in their ketogenic way of eating. I'm now mostly carnivore, and so I seldom, if ever, eat nuts. But if you're still keto and you've got the carb grams to spend, nuts are a great addition. They're delicious. They're full of vitamins and minerals. They do have the phytic acid and the lectin problem, so watch out for that. For some people, nuts inflame them and they just can't eat them. And so you'll have to do the experiments and find out if you're that person or not. Okay. Now, if you know someone who's stalled on their weight loss and just can't lose more weight, please consider sharing this video with them because it may be nuts that are the culprit. Okay. You're welcome to share this in your low carb group, your keto group, or on your personal Facebook page. I'd appreciate that if you did that. Also, Nisha and I would love it if you would join Team Berry by either subscribing to Patreon down below. It's a quick sign up and you can throw a buck or two our way to help us have more time to make videos just like this. Or you can go to my Facebook page and like and follow that. And then we go live every Sunday night at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And you can join us there and ask your questions and be part of Team Berry. All right, this is Dr. Berry. I'll see you next time.